Hello everybody, welcome to SNE Education. Today we are going to see the summary of Class 10. Chapter 4. The Making of a Global World. Let us start with the pre-modern world. Globalization is an economic system associated with the free movement of capital, goods, technology, ideas and people across the globe. It developed mainly through trade, migration of those who were seeking better life and movement of capital. Travelers, traders, priests and pilgrims traveled vast distances in search of knowledge, opportunity, spiritual fulfillment, or to escape persecution. They carried articles, values, skills and even diseases. The Silk Route is a pre-modern trade route over land and sea which affected cultures of China, Central Asia and the West. Besides trade, art, literature and philosophical ideas were also exchanged. Food traveled. Potatoes from North-South America and the Caribbean islands traveled to the rest of the world when it was accidentally discovered by Christopher Columbus. Precious metals from mines of Peru and Mexico enhanced European trade with Asia. The Europeans conquered and carried diseases like smallpox to South America. Europe leaped ahead of other continents due to Renaissance, Industrial Revolution, capitalism, ideas of the French and American revolutions. Colonies were established by Europeans all over the world. Next point is the 19th century 1815–1914 economy. The 19th century saw international economic exchange by three types of movements or flows: trade flow, labor flow and capital flow. Industrial Revolution changed the consumption and production pattern of the people. Demand for food increased. England imposed corn laws but tried to withdraw them under pressure from urban dwellers and industrialists. It led to import of cheap agricultural products into England. Countries like Eastern Europe, Russia, America and Australia increased their food productivity to meet British needs, and became industrialized. Global migration took place, and nearly 50 million people migrated from Europe to America and Australia in the 19th century due to poverty, hunger and to escape religious persecution. Technology reached its highest peak in Europe with the invention of railways, steamships, telegraph and shipbuilding. Meat trade at this time is a fine example of interdependence of technology and economy. Late 19th century saw colonization at huge scale by Britain, France and followed by Spain, Portugal, Germany and Belgium. The USA also became a colonial power by the 1890s. Most regions of Asia and Africa became colonies of the West. Rinderpest or the cattle plague arrived in Africa from Europe. It destroyed nearly 90% of the livestock and destroyed the livelihood of the natives. Mine owners and colonial powers benefited by it, and Africa ceased to be a free continent. A new system of slavery, indentured labor immigration from India started to the Caribbean islands, Mauritius, Fiji, Ceylon and Malaya. Though cheated and treated badly, they adapted to their new environment and cultural fusion took place as a result of this process of migration. Indian entrepreneurs, some bankers like Natak Ankatayas financed export of agriculture to Central and Southeast Asia. They even followed the Europeans to Africa. Industrial Revolution in England changed the balance of trade between England and India. Indian handicraft and agriculture were destroyed and Britain enjoyed a trade surplus with India. Their exports increased and imports decreased. Next point is the interwar economy. The First World War 1914–1918 transformed the socio-economic and political structure. of the world. The war killed 9 million and injured 20 million people by using new, modern weapons of mass destruction. Economic transformation took place in the form of shift in investment and capital distribution. The war encouraged war-related goods. The USA became international creditor of Europe, Russia being a communist country in 1917. The League of Nations was formed to end all future wars. Post-war recovery. Britain faced a steep war debt, and her position as a world economic power ended. Unemployment increased, grain prices fell due to overproduction. After the war, Eastern Europe revived its wheat production, leading to a glut. The US recovered from the post-war crisis at a great speed due to the introduction of mass production. Henry Ford introduced the assembly line production. His T-model Ford was the world's first mass-produced car. Mass production lowered the costs and prices of engineered goods. These was a housing and consumer boom in the 1920s, which ultimately led to the Great Depression of 1929. Markets crashed in 1929, and led to failure of banks, and the American crisis affected other countries. By 1933, over 4,000 banks closed, and between 1929 to 32 about 110,000 companies collapsed. India was also affected by the Great Depression. Indian exports and imports declined extensively, prices fell. Bengal jute growers suffered the most. Large-scale migration took place from villages to towns and cities. Next point is rebuilding of a world economy, the post-war era. The Second World War 1939 and 1945 was even more devastating than the first. About 3% of the world population perished, more civilians than fighting soldiers. Two countries, USA and the USSR, emerged as superpowers in the post-war scenario. International organizations like the UNO and others were established to maintain peace and stability. Two lessons were learnt by the economists and the politicians in the post-war system. To ensure mass consumption in an industrial society by high and stable income. 2. To ensure full employment and government control of flows of goods, capital and labor. Bretton Woods Agreement, July 1944. To ensure a stable economy, a framework was agreed upon at the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference held at Bretton Woods in New Hampshire, USA. It established the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and the World Bank. The IMF was to deal with external surpluses and deficits of its member nations. The World Bank was an international bank for reconstruction and development and was to finance the post-war reconstruction. Bretton Woods system was based on a fixed exchange rate. National currencies were pegged to the American dollar at a fixed rate. The Western powers, the USA especially, controlled the decision-making provisions such as the right to veto. It linked national currencies and the monetary system. The Bretton Woods system benefited the Western industrial nations and Japan and brought immense trade and income to them. Post-war era saw rapid decolonization and many countries in Asia and Africa became independent nations, supported by UNO and name. Group of 77 or G77 was organized by developing countries to demand a new international economic order which would give these countries real control over their national resources, raw materials, manufactured goods and their markets. MNCs or multinational companies were established in the 1950s and 1960s and operated in several countries. So students, this is all about this chapter. I hope you like it. To get immediate notification from SNE Education, press the subscribe button and press the bell icon. Thank you.